Hey guys, yes, another tube sorting video. The third in the series and hopefully the final installment. I wanted to show you guys what I found worked and didn't work and the final results. I've made really good progress. Mostly I'm down to the miniature tubes, the 7 and 9 pin tubes. And I've been using these Sterilite 6-quart containers. At first, I think in the last segment I talked about, well, these work out pretty well if I put on one layer maybe of the spares and then put these on their end, could pop the top off and look at a glance and see what's in there, maybe put a label on the end to let me know what's in the container. Well, then a friend stopped by and saw what I was doing and he said, well, has it ever occurred to you to put all the tubes on their sides like that, and then you can look through the side of the container and pretty readily see what's in there because these are transparent. So I thought, well, okay, let's give that a shot, see how it works out. So all these ones you see in these Procom blue boxes, these are poles that I tested and boxed myself, which is probably about half of the tubes I have. Same with these white boxes. These I got less expensively. There was a deal on eBay. I bought like 1,000 of them or something like that. And then when I ran out of these and the seller didn't have any more, I had to switch to these generic white boxes, which I don't like as much because these are like modern ones made out of just cardstock and stamped out. These you can buy today like on eBay from various tube suppliers. They're a little, generally these once when you try to open them you're likely to just tear it apart, or you got to get it like a butter knife in there and pop the top open. Not easy to open, they're thicker material. Anyways, they're also a little bit shorter. That's the important thing here, because these blue boxes and some of the other commercial tubes, if you put the tubes in, figure, well, if I have the label pointing out to either side, I can easily look from either side and see what's in there. These don't fit. However, let me pull out some commercially made tubes like these RCAs and GEs. These are shorter, generally speaking. Just enough so that these do fit very nicely, like so. And then you may recall, and these are being a little bit shorter, a combination of one of these with one of these will generally fit too. And I may recall in the previous video I was complaining about the sloping sides in these. Not anymore. That's a plus because the higher you go, the wider it gets. So by the time you get to the second level and higher, the longer tube boxes fit. So awesome. Now that's what I've been doing with these. And here's one that's further along. So if you want to see what's in there, flip it on one side, flip it on the other, you can see the entire contents. Unfortunately, they seem to only make them in these, I think they call it concrete gray. Previously, I had gotten them in kind of pink and blue when they were on sale. They were selling these like 10 containers for $10 or even less at Home Depot. They no longer have them. The only thing they have are these gray, and they're hard to find. These magentas I actually got off of eBay. So at least I have 4 colors to choose from. Kind of a pinkish, a magenta, a blue, and a gray. So once I get them all sorted, I'll see if I can use different colored lids to make any kind of sense out of it. Like maybe the 12-volt tubes I'll put with a magenta lid or something like that. Well, before, so I was having trouble finding these at Home Depot. I needed a bunch more because it turns out I have a lot more miniature tubes than I realized. I saw they had them at Walmart, or so I thought. And also inexpensive, even less expensive actually. I think you get 9 for $10. And it's the same company, although there's no label on them, but on the website it said it was the same company, same dimensions and everything. So I went and got them. It turns out, no, they are not. They look awfully similar. But, take a closer look, the detail isn't as fine. The plastic isn't as transparent. The sides slope a bit more. Everything's a bit rounder. It's a little bit flimsier. In other words, it's lower quality. And I think about it, I thought this was the same company, and I think their website says it's the same company, but there's no label on this, so maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a knockoff. You know what they say, you get what you pay for. So, what's the problem with these? Well, you can make them work, but they don't work as well. So if you go and try to put these two tubes, even the shorter ones, they don't fit at the end. This has more of a slope, it gets narrower at the bottom. What you can do, though, I discovered, is you can do one section of them pointing out the ends. And then it gets wide enough in the middle that you can start doing this, and then do the same at the other end. So it can work, but here's the other issue with these. The plastic, it's not quite as transparent. You can see through it, but it's cloudier. You don't see as well through it. So, regrettably, I don't think these are what I want to go with. So, I tracked down another Home Depot further away, and I got 10 of the Sterilites. That plus the ones I already had should be enough. I'll use these for other things, like generally when I work on a new project. I have all the screws and bits of hardware and stuff I take out, I put into one of these so I don't lose anything. Alright, well what was it? Walmart, I also noticed they had a larger size, so I got a few of these. And these do work pretty well for octal tubes, because they do, again, you can do the same technique of putting them end to end. And they fit in there very nicely. But same issue, yeah, you can see them, but it's not like crystal clear. But it's an option. Sterilite, I think, has that size, but I have not seen them. I think, yeah, like on their website, they say they do, but not in the shops that I've been to. So, I've been going through, my organizing technique, as a number of you suggested, has been to go by tube number. So I started with, I have one container that's all the tubes that start with a 0 or a 1 or a 2. One container with the 3s, one container with the 4s, I think 1.5 containers with the 5s. Because of course it's not always going to work out perfectly that you fill up a container with all of a certain type. So I do have some overlap. And then when you get to the 6s, probably 80% of the tubes I have start with 6. So that I had to get more of a breakdown. So all the 6As and 6Bs are by far and away the most common. So for example, this entire box is just tubes that start with 6B. I'm not going to go any further with sorting it than that, so I'm just going to start filling these containers with these. I always put the commercial ones on the bottom because they're shorter. Yeah, it's annoying if I want to use a new old stock commercial tube. When I'm working on something, I'll have to dig a little bit, but that's the way they fit in there. So the 6As, the 6Bs, after that, I did start sorting them. So 6Cs and then Ds, a lot of those. So those kind of got their own containers, and then I combine the E and F, and then the G, H, and then the K, L, M's, you know, kind of like that. It seems like the further you go up in the alphabet, the less common the tubes are. So in this last box, it's kind of the last of the ones I have to sort. This is like K through X, what's left in here. And then the 12-volt tubes and so on. The octals and the globe tubes, the old style 4-pin tubes, those I've mostly got sorted. And then there were the leftovers. I'll show you those in a bit. I'm just about done sorting through the miniature tubes, so I thought I would switch gears and show you what I did with the rest of the tubes and how they're being stored. So this is one of those inexpensive Home Depot shelving systems. I previously had it filled with LPs and test equipment. Still have a few to move out of here. So that'll give me 4 shelves, fixed height. This can hold a reasonable amount of weight. I can handle all these tubes. I mean, I had LPs on here that weighed several hundred pounds. That's why their shelves are bowed a little bit. If I need to, I can get another one. I think somebody had thrown 1 or 2 of these out in the alley behind our place, and I grabbed some of it. So in addition to the units we already had, I have some spare parts, so I think I got to replace this broken shelf. At any rate, these fit in here quite well, as do the underbed ones I showed in a previous installment. So the height is perfect. You can't adjust the heights on these shelves. There's plastic tubes between each shelf and the height is fixed. But 3 of these fit perfectly. You can almost fit 4 side by side, but not quite. I don't know that I'd want to go anyways. I mean, you can if you suspend one a little bit like that. But I don't know that I would anyways, because then you can't see what's in them unless I label the ends. But if I go this way, then you can. And I believe it does work out that you can put 2 of these side by side, and you can go about 3 deep. I don't think what I have is all going to fit on one shelf. I have a few more of these upstairs, so I'll probably use the top 2 shelves for the miniatures. And most of my tubes will fit on the bottom 2 shelves. So these worked out really well. These are the underbed containers for the octal tubes. They are standing vertically, so you can't see them, unfortunately, but the height just works out too well to not use these. Here's one where I did go on the side, but that's not that practical because it's wide enough that you get 3, so you can't see what's down the middle. So what I did in this is I put all my duplicate tubes down the middle. So if you look at the ends, you can kind of see what's in there. Alright, so the bottom one, the long one that I didn't think would be useful, turns out to be very useful. For one, it fits perfectly in an entire shelf. And 2, it's tall enough that I can put my tallest tubes. So what I did is I put all my globe tubes and other early tubes down on the bottom. They're the ones I use the least often, that also I kind of want to get out of the way so they don't get damaged. So that works out great. Pretty much they're all down there. And I was also surprised that once I pulled out the early tubes, the rectifiers, the horizontal output tubes, and the damper tubes, that all my octal tubes pretty much fit into one of these tubs. And one of these tubs is the early octal type, like 6K7, 6Q7, the early style with the ST shape. That's what's in one of these, and one of them is just rectifier tubes, and then I'll take a third one and put select horizontal output tubes and damper tubes into it. So I think that'll pretty much cover all that stuff. So what about everything else? Well, this entire tub, and I just found this box, are all Compactrons. I was hoping to fit them all into one tub, and I just found this box, so that kind of stinks. I'm going to hang on to them, because I do have a few sets that might need them, like my GE Portacolor. For the most part, I will probably never use these. So they're going to get put into, maybe I got one larger tub they can fit all these into, and they're going to get packed well away, maybe even out in the garage. We've already talked about the damper tubes and the horizontal output tubes. That's what's in these 2 bins. Had a lot more of both than I realized. The empty tube caddies are going to go bye-bye. And then this, which is everything else, pretty much. These are all the oddball tubes. So, for example, these I will keep for display items. These are image orthicons, 3-inch style. These would have been used in color cameras back in the day that have a red, a green, and a blue. And then I believe a larger 4 or 5-inch for black and white for a higher resolution. The rest are basically transmitter and industrial tubes. So like a bunch of 866 mercury rectifiers. I have a whole bunch of the Noble gas regulator tubes, OA3, OC3, OD3, a lot more than I realized. Mostly OC3 and OD3, or 0D3 and 0C3 I should be saying. The rest are like transmitter, oddball, industrial kind of stuff, 715B. Stuff I will probably never ever find a use for. These though, these do look cool when they glow. I'll pull a few out and show you. So those I'm sure have some resale value for the tube crowd. The A's especially look cool, the 0A3, 0A4s, which I have far less of. And like a lot of 1625 ham type tubes, pretty useless these days. So I don't know what I'm going to do with all these. Some look cool, so they make this good display items, but most of them look something like that, or they just kind of look like a generic octal tube. But for sure, I don't have any immediate use for them, so they will get stored away along with the compactrons. We're going to start with the 0A4. I must correct myself, this is not a cold cathode regulator tube, this is a gas thriotron, sort of like an SCR. But this also has noble gases in it, it also glows in a rather cool way, so check this out. Very nice purple glow. And that's why people use these. They'll stick them in amplifiers sticking out the top, or, you know, in some kind of cool project. Oh, I see that flickering? Even though it's not actually doing anything in the circuit, just because it looks cool. Now, let's see if I can figure out how to make these other tubes work. I know I've tested them in emission type testers. There's a Hickok 600 which can test just about anything, so I would think it'd be in here. Well, I did some research and very quickly found out why this tube isn't listed, because very few tube testers test tubes using DC, which is what you need to accurately test these, because you want to check that breakdown voltage. For that, you're going to need a stable DC source and probably a reference so you can make sure it's on target. Most tube testers actually use AC on the plate and various control elements. That doesn't mean, though, that we can't light this puppy up, so check this out. Now, I don't recommend you do this because you could damage your tube tester and are not officially supported. I am just using the same settings that I use with the 0A4. I just gave it a shot. I have not checked the exact voltages. I don't know if it's within the safe limits, but it does light them up. So, here we go. That is the 0A3. I don't want to do this too long because I don't want to damage my tester. But that is a very pretty red-orange, well, neon. So this would be the 75 volt version, I believe. So that could very well just be neon gas in there. Alright, now on to the 0B3. As memory serves, the 0As are the coolest looking. Now this one's got a bit of a getter shield all around it, so I don't know how well we're going to see anything, but let's give it a try. So 0B3. There's a nice purple. I adjusted the camera a bit for a better close-up. Here's the 0B3 again. Very nice purple-violet color. Next up, the 0C3, which seems to be the most common. I was wondering, I was thinking about that. Why would this be the most common? And the most likely reason I came up with is, well, two possibilities. One, it's a commonly needed voltage is 105 volts, but I think it was more likely is the gases that it uses are the least expensive of these four types. Because really, if you're going to use resistors to divide the voltage down and whatnot, you could use any one of these four, I would think, assuming your power supply has a high enough voltage that it can light them up. Anyways, here is the 0C3, which is kind of hard to describe what that color is. It's it's similar to the other one that we just did. Try to get it over the top so you can look down in there. It's almost a little hard to focus on it. I guess you'd call it in a purple violet-ish color, but it's not as distinctly purple as the previous tube. Maybe it's kind of going into the UV range. Alright, and finally the 0D3. The internal structures of all of these tubes, the pinouts, they're basically all identical. It's really just the breakdown voltage that's different. And well, this one is pretty much the same. There we go. It's very similar to the OC3. Camera's having a little bit of trouble there. So now, if you want the most bang for your buck, just for display purposes, I would go, I think my first choice would be the 0A3, then 0A4, then 0B3. The C3 and D3 are just really kind of faint purplish. Now, these are some of the few tubes that, when operated correctly, do glow. I've seen a number of cheesy amplifiers, some of which I just put blue LEDs under the tubes to make them glow. Or I think they're overdriving the tube or messing with it some other way to make it glow when it's not supposed to. These, when operated correctly in normal conditions, do glow a very nice color. So, briefly again, that is a 0A4. Here's the 0A3, which I think is my favorite. And finally, another look at the 0B3. Now here's, I'm pushing it too hard now, and the fuse light's lighting up, but notice it gets dimmer, brighter. So here's kind of normal-ish range. So you can push these things harder and they will light up more, but I think you're going to shorten the life of the tube. Alright, enough of that. Let's get back to wrapping up the tube sorting. Well, I thought I was about to record the final segment in this video when I realized I still have a whole bunch more tubes to go through. I know, cry for me, big problems to have, right? What I hadn't realized is when we first moved in, I stuck a bunch of tubes in that steel shelving system in the corner. I thought that was mostly refinishing supplies and radio chassis, but no, that's where I put some of my, well, let's say the good tubes, the high-end tubes, the rare tubes, new in box, globe tubes, that kind of stuff, and some oddball stuff. So let's quickly go through it. Now, on the positive side, a lot of these will just kind of get stored right back where they are, left in the boxes, because they're not things I'm going to need anytime soon. This box has a bunch of tubes from Japan that a fan sent me. Now, about half of these were American-type tubes, and I pulled those out and put them in with the others, but these are oddball ones. They might cross over to European or US tubes. I don't know, but I'm not going to bother with those right now. I thought I isolated all of my audio output tubes because I wasn't finding very many, and yes, they are in here. The 6L6s, 6F6s, 50L6s, 6V6s, and so on. So that explains that little mystery. Really wasn't expecting to find this. I kind of wish I hadn't. As it is a whole box of miniature 7 and 9 pin tubes that start with the number 6. I spent a ton of time sorting through and separating out what I thought were all that I had. Now there's several hundred more. I'm I'm just going to leave them for now because I'm just about out of plastic containers, so these will just be my backup. As I use up the other ones, I'll you know, pull them from here eventually. Now I get into some stranger stuff. These are acorn tubes, new in the box, like $9.58. This is an acorn tube, mushed in a socket. These were an early type of high-frequency tube used, I think, primarily during World War II. This was a precursor to those miniature tubes on the box right below. So we went from kind of the Coke bottle tubes to these, to the 7 and 9 pin miniatures. Yeah, pre-World War II, there were no 7 and 9 pin miniature tubes. There were no 6AU6s or 12AU7s or anything like that. So they had these little weird acorn tubes. They call them acorn tubes, well, because they look like an acorn. Pretty useless these days. Some test equipment used them right after the war because these were available very inexpensively as surplus. You might find them in an oscillator, like an RF oscillator, so you get a relatively high frequencies. So a box of those. I got a couple boxes of cardan tubes, which is very apropos because of the radio that's right next to them, which is a Sparks Withington that I'll be talking about soon. And it uses these oddball 484 cardan tubes. It's the only radio that uses them as far as I know. Basically it's a type 27 with a different filament requirement. What else do we have? Rectifiers, high voltage rectifiers in particular. So we have some new in the box ones, and some regular rectifiers. And well, no, actually this is just a mishmash. I wonder why these are all segregated into this box. 6BG6, a 5Z3, type 3944. Yeah, I don't know. I think these are just tubes that were left over that didn't fit the other boxes I have because there's no real rhyme or reason to these. And some 5642s. I'm going to pull one of these out because, well, I'll tell you in a moment. I recently did a video on high voltage rectifiers, and several of you pointed out that I left one type out, which is this 5642. In that big box, there's this little sleeve, and inside that is a tiny little tube. This is a high voltage rectifier. Just 3 leads. No cap on it or anything like that. These were used typically in voltage doublers, triplers, in oscilloscopes, and in the Philco Safari TV. I think it has 2 of these in it, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's why I bought these. And even so, I think in this really tiny print on this really tiny tube, yes, there is an X-ray radiation warning. So on this little itty-bitty tube, you could potentially get X-rays if you drove it really hard, I suppose. I don't think this thing can handle 25,000 volts or so, but, you know, they gotta be cautious with these warnings, so that's why it's on there, I'm sure. What else? What else? Well, here's another box of 484s. I think these are the primo ones I have that are like new old stock matched. You need a matched set of 6 for this radio right next to me here. And this is sealed up. I think that's why I did that, because I had aspirations to restore one of these long ago and never got around to it. This box are tubes that have a different numbering system. They are 4 digits. These are industrial type versions of some common tubes, and I think these are some premium audio tubes. Like a 7056, I think, is an, what would you call it? A hi-fi, audiophile grade tube. This hi-fi kind of became a thing in the 50s and 60s. Some of the major manufacturers introduced tubes that were supposedly extra good for audio. I think those are typically the ones that start with 57, maybe 56, or 7, or maybe the 7000 series. That's really not my thing, so I don't recognize a lot of these numbers. I think some of these are industrial computer grade, like 12AU7s. So what does that mean? Built to better specifications, sometimes longer life filaments, like some of these were used in like repeaters in cable systems or telephony systems, and like boxes that they didn't want to have to service very often, so they had extra beefy filaments that would last much longer than usual. Again, tubes are, and this solves a mystery for me. These are the last of the tubes that I knew that I had that I couldn't locate. On top, it's a bit of randomness, but I think this is mostly stuff left over from my Philco 15DX restoration project, during which I located and installed a complete set of Philco Globe tubes. The cool early ones with the Philco paper label and such. And in doing so, I got some duds, I got some weak ones. I think that's mostly what's in here, the tubes left over from that project. Below it, I showed these years ago. I bought these from a fellow. I bought a whole lot of new old stock tubes, mostly Globe, some not boxed, mostly boxed. Some of the cool early boxes like National Union. I'd forgotten how nice these boxes look. And the early Sylvanias. We got the green leaf on them. No, yeah, Sylvania. I knew I had some 47s. Man. I say that because I'm getting ready to work on a Philco Type 90 and it needed a Type 47. I knew I had them, couldn't find them. I ended up buying a new one for, I don't know, 15 bucks or something like that. Well, here's two of them new in the box. So, oh well. See, that's the price of being disorganized. I also found, remember during that high voltage rectifier X-ray video, I talked about the 3DR3, that's the tube with the lead jacket on it. And I ended up buying one off of eBay because I couldn't find mine. Of course, I found two of them while going through all these tubes. So, hopefully those types of problems will never, ever, ever happen again. Now these I think I'm just going to put right back exactly where they were. These will only be used for special radios, or maybe this is my retirement fund right here, as these can continue to increase in value, hopefully. Alright, let's wrap up this video. I still have a few more to sort, but I think you get the idea by now. It's funny, I started out with a lot of less desirable tubes, to the point I was thinking, wow, maybe I don't have as many useful tubes as I thought. But the further I went, the more and more useful tubes I found, to the point of like, oh boy, I actually have a lot more tubes than I thought I did. So, these top two tiers are just about completely filled up with tubs of 7 and 9 pin tubes. Hundreds and hundreds of them. Not perfectly organized, but a lot better than they were. There's an overwhelming number of tubes that start with the number 6. It's probably more than half of what's up here. A little hard to organize them all. Hopefully as I use them up, you know, you may think, wow, this is a crazy amount of tubes. But remember, some of these early TVs use as many as 30 tubes. And if they're all missing, which sometimes happens, or there's a bunch bad, you can go through these tubes pretty quick. Also, when I restore a TV for someone else, I tend to give them all new old stock tubes, or tubes that test like new. The tubes that are marginal or used up, I use for my own stuff until they have no life left. And then moving down, we have all of the octal tubes. And then finally, the more common early type tubes, types 27s, 37s, 80s, and so on. And what's left over? Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's a tub of industrial tubes. Here's my 2 tubs still of the damper and horizontal output tubes. And I have 2 similarly sized tubs filled with compactrons, all of which I'm going to hang on to because I may need them someday. Especially the horizontal output tubes. It's just an overwhelming amount to have in the shelving system. Okay, that is going to be it. I hope you found this somewhat interesting and maybe got some ideas on how to organize your tubes. I know others of you have different systems and you shared your ideas and thoughts with me already. This is not perfect. I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect solution, but it's a heck of a lot better than opaque cardboard boxes filled with random contents.